do it every time. Every time.
Just switch the plate.
It's not where I sit.
Just switch.
Again, yeah, look, do I have to say it again? I know Peter Columbotus, and you're no Peter Columbotus.
No, I just love sitting next to Tim.
Tim, she just wants to sit next to you.
I didn't even notice that.
You know, if you didn't like the card you were dealt,
No,
you should
no,
have traded.
I know.
She sits next to me to enlighten me on things. She like whispers at me, no, you gotta do this. No, you're an idiot. Do it this way.
I have never done that.
You wanted to, though.
Is everybody ready?
Is everybody here?
Enough people here.
Right.
Call this meeting of the Bridgewater Town Council to order. Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's have a brief moment of silence in recognition of veterans and those who have passed. Thank you. This will be an abbreviated town council meeting tonight because this is a special meeting that was called for a couple of weeks ago to kind of discuss a little bit about the results of our special election held last Saturday. So we really have no other business on the agenda this evening, so I'll go right down to our town manager, or our discussions tonight under...
Mr. President,
yes,
could we
Mr.
just dispense with A, B, and C and go to citizens forum? It's important.
Oh, that's right, we have to
offer
do
the
citizens forum, forget about that.
Citizens have a chance to speak if they want to.
Are there any citizens here that wish to speak during the open forum section of our meeting? Any citizens here that wish to speak during the open forum portion of our meeting? Anybody at all? Seeing none? And we'll move on down to discussions under JA, and I'll just refer to the town manager who put together a brief synopsis of what to expect going forward.
Mr. President, thank you. As I think everybody knows, the Mitchell School vote on Saturday was in favor of a debt exclusion, which means that the amount of money that the townspeople have to spend for the new Mitchell School will be an additional tax on their tax bill, but once the school is paid off, that amount will disappear. We won't have a bond to pay off, so that amount will disappear. I had a discussion today with somebody who was concerned that it appeared like an override, and I assured him that it's not an override, that it is in fact a debt exclusion. So I just want to make that clear. So steps from here, the Massachusetts School Building Authority prepares the finalized project funding agreement. This is the next step. As Councilor Fitzgibbon says, checks off another box. And they send that to the district for execution. This will update the project scope and budget agreement, which has already been negotiated and formalized, and then it will formalize MSBA's commitment to funding the remainder of the project. So the MSBA is committed at this point $33,828,113 towards the project. Next steps for the school building committee will be to execute the OPM contract extension. I'll call it the contract extension, and the design contract extension. The designer and the OPM have both been on board since the beginning, and their work now will continue with amendments to their contract. So the proposed designer fee is between $6,020,000 and $6,250,000, and the owner's project fee is going to be $2,050,000. So those are actually a little bit less than the MSBA had estimated several months ago. And these costs are part of the total project budget. So nothing about this project will be extra cost. It's all included in what the council had appropriated and what the voters opted to debt exclude. The MSBA, I think this came up at a couple of sessions, public sessions prior to the vote, in regard to people that were concerned about, what the oversight's going to be on a new construction, because because clearly there wasn't the proper oversight or the proper proper oversight when the original Mitchell was built. So this is a little bit of a different process. The School Building Authority executes a work order and a contract with commissioning agents. Commissioning agents essentially are sort of hyper inspectors. They will do a thorough testing and inspection of the exterior envelope. These are the areas where commissioning agents are employed. Exterior envelope, fire protection, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical all get commissioning services. So nothing can be signed off on and approved until the MSBA inspectors have come in and done their work, or the commissioning agents, I should say, have come in and done their work. The cost for that those commissioning agents is 100% paid by the School Building Authority. So that is not part of the project budget, because it doesn't need to be. It's paid solely by the MSBA. So I'll show you a timeline in a minute to give you a visual, but Module 6, which is the detailed design phase under the MSBA rules. So if anybody wants to look at all the different modules, they're welcome to do it. It's on the Massachusetts School Building Authority website, and it's laid out in excruciating detail. But Module 6, which is detailed design, will go into that phase now, and that'll take approximately 10 months between design development, fleshing out the balance of the design, and then getting to 60% and then 90% construction documents. So altogether, that'll be roughly 10 months. Bidding will take approximately 2 months, and then the OPM will certainly help. There's a whole bidding process, so only qualified sub-bidders will be allowed to bid on the process or on the project, and then those will be incorporated, and then only qualified general contractors will be allowed to bid on the project as well. So every contractor that will be on the job will be vetted, pre-vetted, and then obviously go through a procurement process. So then finally, Module 7 is the construction phase, and we're looking at November 2020 and completion in approximately June of 2022. And as I mentioned, the School Building Authority will continue to oversee the development of each of the design phases and approve respective submissions to the MSBA. To give you just a visual, here's the visual. We're now close to the beginning of November, so that's a 4-month design development phase, and then the creation of contract documents, design, contract plans, upon which we can contractors can bid, and then bidding and the award taking place September and October, roughly 11 months from now. And then the building, the red line is November of 2020 through June of 2022. And then during the summer of 2022, we anticipate moving into the building. The pink line, which I didn't mention prior, but that's the 3-month demolition of the existing building. That will take place this spring, at least tentatively take place this spring. The rationale for that, for doing the demo prior to the bidding, the procurement process, the bidding and the award, is that with a clean site, contractors will be a little sharper with their pencils. If we incorporated the demolition into the project or into the construction project, I think the OPM advised the building committee that would tend to drive the cost of the project up because of the potential issues associated with the demolition and issues associated with the site after the demolition. So this way, demolition is done, we've got a clean site, we know exactly what we have to deal with, and a contractor will know exactly what they have to deal with as well. So that looks that basically looks like the process from here on out. So we're looking at building completion June of 2022. Obviously, there'll be commissioning after that, and then the move-in. So by September of 2022, we'd be looking at accommodating students and teachers and staff.
Anybody have any questions for the town manager, Councilor Wood?
I have three, if I
Three
could.
questions.
Three questions. The first one going back to the committee, the building committee. So there were a few resignations. Are we actively going to fill those spots? How is the composition of the committee going to work?
The committee is made up of a number of seats that the MSBA requires. So I am required to sit on the committee. The superintendent's required to sit on the committee. The principal is required to sit on the committee. There's some seats that are required. The school business manager is required to sit on the committee. We have a representative from our Bridgewater Finance Committee who sits on the committee, which is a required seat. But other than the required seats, we have had a few resignations. I've actually intend to fill, any empty seats. So if there's anybody interested in contributing to the project at this point, I'm happy to talk to them. So I've got, I think, 3 people interested in joining the committee at this point.
Okay, good. Question number 2 has to do with construction access. So obviously, when the school's finished, there's going to be a gated access out the back through the senior center. Has there been any discussion about whether that would be allowed for construction vehicles, or would we restrict the construction vehicles to South Street?
That's a good question. I can get an answer. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
That's a good question.
And third and final, there was an article on the new Taunton school. I think that's an elementary school. And they ended up saving money from the original project costs. I don't know how they did that. So I know it's early in the process, but how does the committee go about working with the construction organization and the planner and stuff to look for opportunities?
That is essentially part of the remaining design process. So the committee is going to work very carefully with Raymond Design Associates and as well as Daedalus, our owner's project manager. One of the responsibilities of the owner's project manager is to find ways to keep the project certainly within budget, but also find ways to reasonably cut costs. So there's a certain level of value engineering that goes on at this upcoming stage. And then, a lot of what Taunton's success came through having a very clean bidding process. They vetted their subcontractors really well. They vetted their general contractors very well. And then they had a very clear set of plans. So that makes a huge difference, certainly in the procurement world, when you've got very clear plans. There's no room for error, really. I mean, if you're a contractor or a subcontractor and you're bidding on a job, if you've got very clear plans and there's no gray area, it's much easier to pull that price down, especially if you really want the job. Pull that price down because you don't have to accommodate for that gray piece. So short answer is during the remaining design development is the time when OPM and the designer and the committee are going to work together to really make sure that we've got a building that's, quality building, but that we're not going to be overpaying for things that we don't necessarily want or need.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor George?
Thank you, Mr. President, to you to the town manager. So I know that the MSBA is going to be doing some inspections as we go along. Who ultimately does the final inspection and issues the certificate of occupancy?
Ultimately, the certificate of occupancy is always issued by the building inspector,
Okay.
Town's building inspector. This will be a design build project. Mm-hmm. So we'll have the commissioning agents that are going to look at all the things I mentioned. We also have, during the process, we'll have the engineers that we pay for and the architect that we pay for and the OPM that we pay for looking at each step of the way and signing off. They sign off affidavits to say that that this particular piece or this particular, contract or this particular, the electrical and this, at this stage was all done according to plan, and they sign an affidavit to that effect.
So it would be an accurate statement that we will have a much better review process and final approval than we did in the original Mitchell.
I think that's almost an understatement.
Okay.
The process back then and the process now are really two completely different processes. This one is much, much better. We went through, by comparison, we went through a sort of mini version of what the Mitchell School is going to go through with this building, and it worked very well for us. So I'm very confident that there's enough oversight, enough inspections, and enough commissioning to make sure that this is going to be a great project.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? The only thing I want to reiterate too is what Councilor Wood said. I just hope that the building committee has a full complement of members when they start. It would be nice that not that they haven't started, I mean, when they start the process of the actual building, to go forward with that. Anyone else? That's it. So now I'll move on to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens here that wish to speak during the citizens' comments portion of our meeting? Any citizens at all? Seeing none, I will move to council comments and start with Councilor Fitzgibbons.
None tonight, thank you.
Okay.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out to vote and making this a possibility.
George?
I'm all set.
Mr. Wood?
I see we have the new town report.
You going to read it?
No, I will later. I will later. But I want to
Good
thank the
idea.
town clerk and her staff, once again, putting this together. We resolved the issue over ownership of creation of this a couple years back, and these are important to me, but more to my father and other historians, that there's a record that can sit on a shelf and not just what we've done in orders and what other things, but a solid record for people to go on. I'd also like to say, so last week I talked about the travel rule at the school system, and I think I misspoke at that. So since then, we've had a couple conversations. The travel rules back when my kids were in French class and on ski teams, and that sort of thing, were a lot tighter than they are now. It's important that school groups are able to get out and experience what's happening outside of Bridgewater. And they do this through organizations with their teachers and counselors and other things. There was always an exception to the rule. Everyone knows I'm involved in TJ Squared. There was always exceptions for that and several other exceptions. But I remember clearly that I can't remember if it was French or it's probably French, wanted to organize a trip, a cultural trip, and that was denied. And I worked with the Dr. Forbes way back when on the ski changes because of the travel rule. And typical me, I had an inch-thick packet that I went to Dr. Forbes and I talked to the leaders of several busing companies and done federal research. And the safety isn't about the early morning hours. The safety is about making sure your driver is meeting federal regulations with sleep, that there's a change in drivers and that sort of thing. That's why you frequently see when there's a bus accident, it might be a private enterprise or something like that. So I want to say I misspoke. I'm sorry about that. It's a lot more flexible now, and hopefully kids get trips to Washington D.C. for historical value and other locations for cultural value. Thank you.
Chase?
No comment tonight. Thank you.
No comment. Yeah, on that. Huh?
That's good. Go ahead.
And on that note, I too want to thank the voters for coming out last Saturday to vote for this debt exclusion. I think this is a big deal for the town of Bridgewater in a positive way, and I think it will benefit the town tremendously going forward. We do meet 1 week from tonight, where we'll probably have a little bit longer of a meeting. We do not have an executive session tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.